Welcome everyone to this year's 2025 Indigenous Math Education Symposium. This is part two, Igniting the Sparkle or Sparkle Sharing, where we have educators sharing stories of their practice and connecting mathematics to culture and community and place through different projects that they've been doing in their schools or districts or region, sometimes in collaboration with university educators and sometimes involving district staff. So my name is Janice Nowakowski, and I'm one of the hosts for this session, and I'm part of the Indigenous Math Education Network. I would like to acknowledge that I am joining you this afternoon from the traditional and unceded and ancestral lands and waters of the Hunkaminam people. And we are joining from all over the region again, so we invite you to share in the chat where you're joining us from and acknowledge the territory or region that you're joining us from. And again, we do land acknowledgements for many reasons. One of them is an act towards reconciliation, and also to share reverence and knowledge about the indigenous knowledge holders in the lands about the lands and waters around us. And I always think about seasonal changes, and we're full into spring down here where the river meets the ocean, where the Stalo meets the Salish Sea, and the flowers are in bloom, and the birds are nesting, and there's lots of bird song. And just paying attention to those seasonal cycles and what we can learn from the land and the waters around us is some of the knowledge and the teachings that I have taken working with Musqueam and Indigenous knowledge holders in our community. So we're going to move into our first sharing. And for those of you that haven't been part of the Sparkle sharing before, in most of these sessions, there'll be two groups that are sharing. In this session, there's only one. And so they will be sharing from now until about 4 o'clock. And then we'll be pausing for questions and answers. And hopefully a bit of discourse and dialogue based on their project that they're sharing. So I'm going to introduce Samantha Morey and Jennifer Dionne, and they're joining us from Prince George or School District 57. And this is not the first year that they've shared at this symposium, so it's a bit of a continuation of their project, and looking forward to hearing from them. So I'll turn it over to them now.
We're just getting the screen up.
Grace.
There we go. Beautiful. Thank you for that, Janice. That was a really lovely introduction and acknowledgement and everything. That was very nice. It made me feel very calm. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm so happy with how many people we have and how many students we have. That's so exciting. So my name is Samantha Morey. And then my colleague is Jennifer Dionne. She's in the room. She's over there. So if you see me looking over there, it's just at Jen. And our project, we named it Rivers and Waterfalls, and you'll see a little bit more later on. But our goal was mentorship. So we called it Mentorship in Action, grade 6, 7, and Kindergarten Connection. So mentoring my grade 6, 7 children to become mentors to kindergarten students. And then I wanted to give a really quick shout out to Emily Reed. She's the kindergarten teacher of that class, because she was really patient and flexible with all of my 12 and 13-year-olds trying to talk to her 5-year-olds. So yeah. So a little bit about me is that I was born and raised on the unceded territory of the Lheidli, which is here in Prince George. I've never lived anywhere else. I feel like I know the place like the back of my hand. I love to explore and experience nature and everything around me. I've always really loved water. I think that that's why I really enjoyed doing this project with Jen, because it was all centered around water. I love the ecosystems within our water systems, especially around Prince George. We have swamps and rivers and lakes and streams and creeks and just all sorts of things with lots of different life in them. So.
And I'm Jennifer Dionne, and I come from a white settler background, and I was born on the unceded territory of the Lheidli, and I've had the privilege to live most of my life here. I'm a lover of hiking, gardening, running. I'm a wife, mother, daughter, sister, and teacher. I'm currently the New Mercy helping teacher for School District 57, and I've been in this is my 4th year in this role. An overview, a quick overview of our agenda today is we're going to start with a question to ask yourself, and you're going to just be reflecting on this question as we go through our presentation. We're going to tell you how we got started. We're going to talk about supporting students in grades 6, 7 to understand reverence. We're going to connect reverence to math. Then we'll talk about the exciting stuff when the 6, 7 students were mentoring their kindergarten buddies around reverence. Then we'll move on to talking about supporting 6, 7 students to understand respect, and we'll unpack that a little bit because when we say respect, students are very versed in saying what it means, but it actually goes a little bit deeper than that. Then we're going to connect respect to math, and we'll talk about the math learning journey. Then we'll share the final project, which is not quite complete yet. The students are in the process of working on it. And then we'll share our learning. And then we'll have a question to ask you to share. And then if we have time, we're going to visit a water sounds video. So throughout our little time together today, I want you to be reflecting on when was the last time you felt reverence for water? So when were you inspired and felt awe towards water? You can see some of the pictures I have. Yes, we live in Prince George, so about half of our life is spent with snow and ice. So I've included a couple of pictures of those. I've also included a picture of 2 pictures of the rivers that surround our community. So just right now in your mind, just be thinking about a time that you felt reverence for water and if it's connected to your community.
Okay, so how we got started. So this is mine and Jen's 3rd project together. This is my 4th year teaching altogether. So how we kind of got started, she was one of my coaching teachers when I was going through the education program. She came and got to watch me teach and be terrified and all those fun things. And then I think it must have been my 2nd year of teaching, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing with math. I'm like, I am struggling so much. My kids are so just like disengaged from math and I needed help. And I know that she works in the numeracy department. And so we just kind of decided that she would coach me through a project and it was so fun. So we've done one every year since. So yeah, so we kind of went into this project this year not 100% knowing what our end goal was. We just kind of figured we'd wing it. And then it turned into us mentoring my 6, 7s how to be mentors, right? They already had a relationship with that kindergarten class because they were already our little buddy class. And so they already had partners, they already had little friendships, and we'd already done some crafts and everything together. And it just seemed like it made a lot of sense for us to work together on a bit of like a deeper level. At the same time as coaching them to become mentors, we also did some lessons in my classroom with just the 6, 7s about deepening their understanding on the Indigenous Storywork principles. And then we used the work of Joy Fast and Jen Whiffin from their outdoor math noticing water project, and we introduced the students to reverence and respect from a more nature perspective, which was really interesting.
And I'm just going to add a little bit about Sam and my time together. So in the first year that we worked together, I was more of a mentor to Sam. Then in the 2nd year, Sam was a leader and we worked with mentoring other teachers. And so this year, and we weren't sure if we were going to expand on that project or if we wanted to work on mentoring the students in Sam's class. And Sam has a new grade this year. It's her first year with 6, 7s. So we thought that it would be a good opportunity to spend some time mentoring the students to become mentors. For our first few weeks, we started by watching the Noticing Water Reverence video. And this work is put together from is Joy Fast and Jen Whiffin's work, and it's called Outdoor Math. We're going to watch a clip from that video in just a second, but I really encourage you to check out their site. They have so many amazing activities, and it really helps deepen your understanding of reverence. When we were doing this work, like I mentioned previously, we are in Prince George and we still had snow. And so the students made a lot of connections around reverence and the snow and snowflakes and ice. The following week, the 6th, 7th students worked with their little buddies to explore water. We're very fortunate to have a district learning commons in our district, and they provide kits. And so we signed out a water kit that had a whole bunch of amazing water books. So some are stories, some were nonfiction. It included puppets that you were connected to water. So we did lots of fun exploring with that. I'm just going to show you a brief portion of this video that we started with for the grade 6, 7s.
We're going to get ready for some very important work. You're going to be an observer of one of the most ancient, important, and magical substances on this beautiful earth of ours. In fact, without it, there would be no life on Earth at all. This shapeshifter is restless and powerful, changing from wispy, wandering clouds to raging rivers, to smooth surfaces of ice.
So this video is about 5 minutes long. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but I just wanted to share that we started with this with the grade 6, 7s. We didn't share that video with the kindergarten buddies because we thought that they might lose interest a little bit, but it was very, very appropriate for the grade 6, 7s, and they made many connections to the video. Okay, now I have to. Oops. Okay, and so Sam is going to spend some time telling you about our first visit to the kindergarten class and reverence and water.
So our first little lesson that we did with big buddies and little buddies together is what we said to the big buddies, because I love to leave things open-ended and let them be creative and kind of work with things their own way. But what they needed to do, their must-dos, was go through a story with their little buddy. And so we talked about not just reading them the words, like stopping to talk about what you're reading and looking at the pictures and being like, do you like whales? You know, like getting the little buddy engaged and talking about what we're actually seeing in the book. So really take your time with that book. And then we wanted to my 6, 7s to ask the kindergartners was, what do you like about water, or what do you like doing with water? Because we thought, like, what inspires you about water or something might be a bit of a big question for the 5, 6-year-olds. But just what do you like about water, or what do you like to do when water is easy for them? Because they all have some sort of experience with water. So we have a whole bunch of their examples on the screen. Some of my favorites were the cartoon in the corner there, because instead of her writing down quotes from what her little buddy said, they took turns drawing this little comic about the things that they liked to do, which I really liked, that creative freedom. So the big buddy drew the top ones, and then the little buddy drew the bottom ones, and then they talked about the things that they like about water. And then some of my other favorites were the one where it says likes to swim, likes going underwater, and the fish, doesn't like to drink water, likes fish, has seen a narwhal, does swimming lessons. I thought that one is cute because in their class with their teacher, they had just done a narwhal lesson. And so they were all like obsessed with narwhals. And so I think that they were really stoked to be talking about where narwhals live. I also liked like blue water, and that one for more of like a meaningful reason, because you know, you look at a beautiful lake or the ocean or something, and sometimes you're struck by just how blue it is, right? And so even from this 5-year-old's perspective, they're like, wow, that's so blue. And then a fish nibbled my foot. And just imagine like the little squeal and the giggles and everything from a fish nibbling on their toes would be so cute. And then, oh yeah, then we have our pictures. So these are some pictures of them working with their little buddies and the puppets. The kids really loved having the puppets. Like both my kids and the kindergartners loved having the puppets. So if you wanted to do something similar, definitely recommend having some sort of a toy to go along with the stories because they got them all hooked. Yeah, told my kids to go nice and slow, take their time. I think that the lesson itself was probably half an hour or so from getting in, getting settled, going through the stories, writing down what they liked about water. Yeah, I'd say probably about half an hour all in all.
Then we were back in the classroom with the 6-7s the following week, and we talked about math sneaking in. So we focused on discussing how math sneaks in everywhere. Again, we were very fortunate to be able to use the work of Joy and Jen Whiffin, and they have this amazing little PowerPoint that is noticing water, mystery numbers. And so it asks little questions. It's kind of like an SD mystery. So it says most of the water that most of that water is not safe for humans to drink. Okay, what percent of the water on Earth is too salty? So what percent, and I want you to be thinking in your mind, what percent of the water is too salty? And then the hints will show up one by one. So you click enter and it will say it's an odd number. And then you click hint number 2, it is somewhere between 70 and 100. And then when you get to hint number 3, it is double 45 plus 7. And there was definitely some awe when the students realized that 97% of the water on Earth is too salty to drink. Then it goes on to what do you think 97% looks like? So we spent some time talking about this, and different kids took some turns drawing on the whiteboard, and then it goes on to explain it further. Some of that fresh water is far underground or frozen in glaciers where humans can't easily get it. So at the same time as we were exploring reverence and connecting it to math, there was also a lot of other learning that was taking place, cross-curricular.
Okay, and then I had a little lesson with my class, just myself and my 6-7s, about respect because I felt like, I think Jen had asked me, like, should we do a whole thing about respect? And I said, it's been years and years and years, like since kindergarten, these kids every year, probably every day, hear about respect, right? It's something that I feel like is talked about a lot in our school and probably most schools about how to respect each other and maybe respecting the playground. And it's such a commonly used word that I almost feel like it had lost some of its meaning because it's used so often in so many different contexts at school. And so I wanted to bring us down to like the root of respect. Like, what does it actually mean to show respect for things in relation to water? And then that kind of was like, I had a few kids literally go, oh, like a chin scratcher because they never thought of it that way. And so they had some ideas like just like not polluting it, not dumping garbage in it or picking garbage out of it to be respectful. Yeah, it was really interesting to see them because they could tell you all about how to respect other people until they're blue in the face. They could give you a list of 25 ways that they can respect their classmate, but they had a really tough time coming up with ways that they can respect water. And it really got them thinking, like deep thinking questions, which was really fun. I really liked being able to challenge them that way, have them talk with their friends about it. And they were able to connect that background knowledge with what we were doing.
I'm just going to add to that, Sam, and say that we also really try to include respecting the beauty. And there were some students who really talked about the fact that they'd been to our local rivers and some of the ceremonies that they'd participated in there. So it was a really nice way for us to connect respect to the water around Prince George as well.
So then we brought that conversation that we had had about respecting water to our kindergartners class. and asked them about how we can respect the water. So I think that we worded it as like, how can you be kind to water, or how can we take care of our water? And then here were some more of their quotes, just like lots of cute stuff, you know, they're so little. So just really cute little quotes. But my favorites were the bottom three. So keep water clean, put apples in the way. Why is water good? Because you can drink it. So I did like that connection of them saying, well, we drink water, so we need to keep it clean. I don't know about putting apples in the way, but I'm sure they're onto something. Then the second to last one, how do you show respect for water? Be happy, walk around it. Have you ever been to the Nechako River? I've been camping there. And I loved that connection of this student connecting to land and knowing where they have gone and knowing that that was a place that they respected nature and respected the water around them. And then the last one, which I started just because it's hilarious, but I spent 265 years in my room, has nothing to do with water, but I thought that was hilarious.
Sometimes that happens when you're spending time with 5- and 6-year-olds.
Okay, so then we had to bring it all together, because now at this point in the project, we're trying to bring our reverence, for our respect, and the math part all together so that we could start heading towards a final project. So we started by reviewing reverence and respect, going back over these brainstorming sessions that we had done, reconnecting, you know, asking them, hey, it's been a couple of weeks since we talked about reverence. Has anybody experienced anything now that you know what it is and know what it feels like? And we had lots of kids, I think, once we came back to it, share out about reverence. Brainstormed things that we have learned in math up to grade 7, which there will be examples on the next slide. And I have to say, I was so proud that they can come up with so many things we've learned this year. Then we connected our brainstorming to real world examples, so ways that we can see these things around us in our community, and discussed how some of the things that we learned in math have fostered a feeling of reverence, which we also have a slide with some examples. So these are the things that they said that they've learned so far this year in math, and I was honestly so surprised that they were able to remember so many things that we've learned. And I have kids of all, as we all do, but just so many different levels of math in my room. And I was so proud that like almost every kid contributed. I think every kid did. I think we made every kid contribute, but everybody contributed something that they've learned in math this year, or if they really liked something from last year or something. But I was really proud of all the things that they could remember. And then here are some examples of connecting their math to real world examples. This one, when I first learned multiplication in 4th grade, I found it hard because I didn't understand that it's just repeated addition. This is just such a good example of that aha moment that we've now connected to being reverence of like, wow, I get it. You know, and this is a student who has struggled with math in the past. And so for her to be able to say it's just repeated addition is really impressive. And then I liked this one. What gave me reverence was when I tried a recipe from online and I measured each ingredient. So seeing how all these bits and pieces can come together to create something. I also loved the not perfect, but it was good. It shows room for growth and it shows that we're learning. I love it. And this one, this is a student that she takes a little bit longer to grasp new content. And then doesn't really give you much feedback. You know, she always kind of seems a little bit scared about math. So it was really nice to be able to see her put into a reflection that she really enjoyed learning it and she got it and she feels confident with it.
Then we spent some time talking about, with the grade 6, 7s, what they think students learn in kindergarten in math. And so, and how we could support them to experience reverence in connection to math. So basically saying to the grade 6, 7s, how can we do something super fun with the kindergartens so that they get really excited about things that they need to be learning? So we brainstormed what kids do learn in kindergarten, and it was kind of cute. We did have to, some of the 6, 7 suggested, oh, they learn 100 plus 100. So we had to back it up a little bit about what what students really do learn in kindergarten. But we definitely came up with lots of ideas. Then we co-created criteria for a final project for the 6, 7s. And I just have a little note that at the end of the co-creation, we added in that we wanted there to be a Lake Lake nature component. So some of the math activities that the kids brainstormed that they could do with the kindergartens to maybe foster a sense of reverence would be find things outside and count them, leaves, apples. They could use those things to create a nature picture, roll a dice and get them to practice finding that number, roll a dice and play a game, simplified snakes and ladders, go on the playground and count the colors, play with bubbles with a focus on estimating how many bubbles are there, how far do bubbles go, how long do you think it's going to take you to run from goalpost to goalpost, could we time them, could we practice estimation, could we count all the things that they could do on the playground. So these were all ideas that the grade 6, 7 students were generating.
Yeah, so in my class for pretty much every project that we do, I will co-create the criteria with them. So by now they're quite familiar with coming up with the brainstorming different criteria for projects and kind of what do they think I expect from them and what do they expect out of themselves. So we did some brainstorming and then this is what we came up with. These are all of their ideas and they all agreed on all of them. They had some guidance from Jen and myself to make sure we were getting the bits and pieces that we wanted, but yeah, we ended up coming up with all of these. I like the having fun. We're looking for a room full of giggles. You know, we want it to be a really, really good time. We want our game that we're going to make to be functional. We came up with our list of materials and Jen and I made sure that the kids had everything that they need. I gave them lots of time in class to work on it. And obviously practicing a math skill, which we ended up settling on counting up to 50, 1 through 50. Yeah, and then after we had done this with the class, then Jen and I were like, what if we made sure that it was nature themed with the local Clay elements? And so that's not on there because that was after the fact, but.
And just to back up, I'm not sure if we mentioned that the final project is a version of Snakes and Ladders, but that's where the title Rivers and Waterfalls came from.
Yeah, so these are some examples of some of their game boards that they've already started. Most of them are on good copies now and adding color. What we're getting them to do, well, I guess that's on the next slide. That's okay. What we're getting as they finish up before they add color and detail and everything, they're playing with a friend and then they get to finish it up. And we have like in the middle there, it's spiders and raindrops. So the spiders will bring you up the board and then the raindrops will bring you back down. We have rivers and waterfalls. We have rivers and logs. It's like trees and leaves. We have so many different combinations and the kids were really excited to come up with like their combination. And then you have to ask them like, which one brings you up the board and which one drops you back down the board. And they're really excited about it. They're all very proud. And the most challenging part, honestly, was them creating the grid. We told them that it's like you need to have your squares and go 1 through 50. And that was the most challenging part for them. We tried to connect it to arrays. You know, if you go 5 by 10, what does that equal? But some of them had to get there in their own way. But they all did. They all did it. So yeah, 6, 7 students, they finish their games, at least partway finish it, play with a friend, put the final details on it, and then we're gonna go and play them with our buddies. And then the plan is to get them laminated, get those like good copies, get it all polished up, laminate it, and then gift it to our buddies as the year-end present for spending so much time together throughout the school year.
So our learning throughout this project, I think, was very large.
Yeah.
I think it was more challenging than we expected, coaching 6, 7 to become mentors with topics that they were exploring for the first time. The learning for the kindergartners was definitely more exploratory than direct. If we wanted it to be more direct, like if we really wanted to be able to say, how do you feel? Can you explain a way that you experience reverence towards water? We would have had to choose maybe a grade 3, 4 class. So with the kindergarten buddies, we just ended up focusing completely on exploratory and really simplifying it. You know, what do you like about water? We had to spend more time exploring reverence than respect because there was background knowledge for respect, and reverence is definitely a less discussed concept. Jen Whiffin and Joy Fast's outdoor math is an amazing resource. It could even be shared with adults to help them deepen their understanding. And sorry, Sam, I was saying them all. You go ahead.
No, I'm enjoying it. And the 6-7s are loving creating the games. Like I said, they're having a really, really good time building their games and having that creative freedom, and they're really excited to give them to their little buddies. And yeah, it's been overall a really fun project.
Oh, we just
Where'd you go?
paused for a sec. Sorry. It doesn't want to advance to the next slide.
Oh.
Okay, the final slide is actually the invitation to share. And so I hope throughout the presentation you were thinking about your own feelings about reverence towards water. And then the invitation to share is how might you foster reverence and respect in your mathematics classroom? And so just give you a chance to think about that for a few minutes. And while you're thinking about that, oh, here we are. Are there any questions, or is anybody brave enough to share some ideas that they might have for their classroom?
Thanks, Jennifer and Sam. And I just want to acknowledge that we do have several students from the University of Alberta. So you may not have your own classrooms yet, but think about as you're, taking courses and thinking about your future students in classrooms, how you might incorporate that idea of how do we create awe for students in their learning across grades. And you've seen an example today of kindergarten and grade 6 and 7, and knowing a little bit about children at those ages. What does that look like across the grades? So hopefully some of you might be willing to put some ideas in the chat or unmute your microphone and share.
You want to read that question?
How do you introduce the concept of reverence, both to 6, 7 and kindy? I teach kindergarten. That's an amazing question. And Sam and I did spend a lot of time on that in the beginning. And I do again have to say that we used that video that Joy and Jen have posted on their outdoor math blog. And then we just talked about it with the 6, 7s. And the first few times we talked about it, I feel like there wasn't a deep understanding, but because I went into Sam's class once a week, every time I went, we reviewed reverence again. And then now when I go in, the kids are amazing at it and can give tons of examples. I think at the kindy level, it's really just about awe. Like, what is fun about math? Or what is fun about water? Janice, do you have anything to add for the kindy? Because I know you have lots of ideas.
Yeah, I think it's that I think kindies naturally come in with awe and wonder. And so it's how do we nurture that and how do we create space for that? And, a lot of teachers of kindergarten and grade 1 might have a wonder wall or a wonder table set up that naturally encourages children to wonder and be curious and ask questions. But I think it's something about going outdoors, and being in awe. And one of the things that I've done with young children is when we go outside for a nature walk, they often are looking at each other or looking down at their feet as they're walking, but it's to stop and look down and look in front of you, look above you, look into the skies, look around you in a 360 way. What do you notice? What is wowing you? And looking for those wow moments. I'm thinking about, walking through a forest or walking down an urban street and what is creating that wow factor for you and talking about that. So just some ideas for the little ones.
And Janice, Lucy posted in the chat, and she said it would be so fun to pair older students with buddies for a nature walk, exploring creeks and nature areas in our own community. Yes, so exciting. And even, you demonstrating awe, oh, look at that creek. Isn't that beautiful? I really like how the water is going over the rocks. And modeling some of the things to give the students the vocabulary, and definitely doing some pre-work with the older students around some of that vocabulary as well.
And I think, we need to remember, I'm just in the next set of circles, Allie Ridley is going to be sharing a project that we did with a group of grade 1 to 3 students. And we need to remember that a lot of families just don't have the time. They're busy working. Children may not be spending very much time outdoors or in natural spaces. And we really did have some moments of reverence for the land and the waters as we walked up in our context in Richmond up to the dike, and the children could see the ocean, and they could see the mountains of Vancouver Island across the ocean. And for some of the children, that was the first time they had been in that natural space, and walking through the grasslands of the estuary, and climbing a Gary oak tree. And those are those moments of reverence for this land that has been here for time immemorial. And again, the caretaking of the land, and I think instilling that reverence for the lands, the waters, the skies above us. Children need to experience that and be in those spaces.
Sam, is there anything you wanted to add?
I'm not too sure. I think you guys did cover it a lot. I was gonna say, I think that the biggest challenge, at least for me, to be able to communicate what reverence is to my class was because respect is something that they see and they do, but then reverence is something you feel. And so you kind of, when we first started, like Jen said, they were all kind of like, okay, crazy lady, but
That's me.
but as they started to realize that feeling that you're talking, because they've all had that feeling, but you're just trying to lead them to recognizing that that's the feeling that we're talking about. And so we did get to see them kind of one at a time be like, oh, yeah, I totally get it. And then once they get it, and they know, and they can link it to reference, and they can link it to awe, and they can do all those things. But I think somewhere between kindergarten and grade 6, 7, they forget that feeling, and I think that they lose sight of that, like that, how good that feels and how good it is for your soul, right? And that was really rewarding, I think, to be able to remind them of just like stopping and looking around you and experiencing beauty and feeling awe. It's really fun.
And then I think I like, Jen, how you brought in that idea of how math can sneak up on you or sneak into the conversation. And we think about for the Indigenous Math Network, that idea of most women. And, Cynthia talked about that last week in the first part of the symposium, and how math is all around us and math can kind of sneak in there in different places. And so how do we name it, right? So notice it and name it and nurture it, just like we do for core competencies. How do we do that with helping children see that math is all around us and the world around us, and that we can make connections, and it doesn't just need to be at school on paper, that math is living and it's a lens and a way to understand the world around us too. So.
I want to add also that Sam does teach at an inner city school, and so the abilities of her students range very widely. I spend a lot of time in all the schools in Prince George, and so this would be a school that I see one of the widest ranges. And this project was accessible to all the students. So even when they were recording what their little buddies were saying, they were given the option to draw a picture. So Sam did an amazing job of making sure that it was inclusive for everybody and that everybody was able to enter at their own level. I'm just looking at the question from Alora, who grew up in Vanderhoof, lucky. And could you tie this into what students can do for our environment and our water systems? Absolutely. I can see that would be an amazing project for grade 6, 7s for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that could be that could be like a whole year learning experience, right? And connect, and it's just I feel like you'd have to spend so much time out for them to be able to, first of all, connect with the nature and water systems, right? They have to care in order to get anything out of it. So especially with 6, 7s, they don't really, it's hard to get them to care about much because they're pretty into themselves at that age. But I think you'd have to spend a lot of time outside and then having all that learning about like the history of the land and water systems maybe in your area, and then in science talking about water systems and what happens when waterways are polluted, and talking about the big garbage patch out in the Pacific Ocean. And just I feel like there'd be so much really essential background knowledge that you could do to get them to care, and then some sort of fun final project to get to go out and pick up some trash and visit nature. And I think that could be fun. I think you could stretch that out over a whole school year.
I think there's, when we think about the math connections to that too, in terms of like it's an authentic reason to collect data or create a graphical representation of data. Like how many pieces of garbage did we pick up along this waterway that's going to seep into the groundwater and affect our water, and like how could we graph that and how could we use that as a way to persuade others, to pick up their garbage or not throw things into the water. And there's measurement connections and data connections and percentages. I'm thinking for your grade 6, 7s, how do we represent that data in different ways and share that information? So, that project-based work where we're getting students involved in that interdisciplinary or more holistic approach, again, connects back to the First Peoples principles of learning and Indigenous pedagogies and all those things that this symposium's about. So I would just like to thank Jennifer and Samantha for sharing this afternoon. And thank you all participants for your contributions and your questions. We really appreciate that. I'm going to stop the recording now. So thank you. You'll have a few minutes. We have a 5-minute break right now for you to sort of stretch and move around and move into your next circle in the second group of circles. And Lita is putting the feedback form in the chat. So again, thank you to Lita. And if you could fill out the feedback form at the end of the end of the second session, that would be great. And thank you all. I'm just going to stop the recording.
And you can find the recordings or resources in the link to that I there in the Math Network.
The website. Thank you. Yes.